was in an autoethnographic piece, and I collected a couple of questions that people ask me every time that I tell them that I'm a PhD student, as a Mexican national who only been here in the United States for the last 4 years of my life. So I collected all those questions, made it a piece, did a research paper, and I decided to present it to you as a short story performance. I hope you don't hate me by the end of it. To be a person of color in America is to be angry all the time. A few days ago, I was asked the same question I get whenever I disclose that my presence here in the United States responds to the fact that I am enrolled in a PhD program. What are you doing after you finish? Are you staying here in the United States or are you going back to Mexico? I find it humorous to think of all the people who believe that I have any control over my stance here, as if I could choose, as if I could just decide. I think it's quite entertaining because to their surprise, my PhD degree will be just as useful as the shoes I'm wearing today, for my eligibility for future citizenship. In the same way, I find it peculiar that the question has always embedded two inescapable options, Mexico versus the United States. Whenever I hear such a question, I feel as if people were asking me, are you marrying your current boyfriend, the one who wants you to be faithful but doesn't really want to commit to you and doesn't give you the formal title? Or are you going back together with your ex who used to abuse you? If it wasn't for my commitment to social courtesy, my unwillingness to engage, and quite frankly, the fact that it's nobody else's business, my answer would always be, are those really my only two life choices? Because in all honesty, this is a question that has substituted my career preference before I go to sea. The question that substituted el angelito de mi guarda that my grandma taught me as a child. My response to this question, will I stay or will I go, is always both concise and confusing. Given the current political reality and my own political correctness, a term so undervalued, my usual response goes something like, I really don't think I'll stay. To which most people appear to have an immediate impulse of responding, is it because of Trump? If my desire to engage in a conversation about politics is so scarce, you would think that by now I could have already found a better answer which could stop the conversation from happening. After all, as Sonia Alvarez points out, one of the first things you learn as a new immigrant in this country called the United States, or illegitimately called America, a quote that I read somewhere, especially if you are a woman and a non-white, is that you have to explain yourself every time, every day, about everything. Moreover, if you think about it for a moment, this new reality of mine doesn't really go well with my Mexican Catholic trauma, I mean my cultural indoctrination, of having to apologize for everything I haven't done, and having to excuse myself at the beginning of every question. Disculpe usted, and then insert whatever you want to say there. However, I'm trying to resist this. I'm trying to decolonize myself. I'm trying to be sincere just as much as I'm trying to resist the temptation of getting caught in an argument that I could never win because of the process of being oppressed by oppression. Oppressed by oppression. Yes, being oppressed by oppression is when an individual who does not belong to a minority community uses social justice jargon to explain how they are being mistreated. In other words, it is a very creative way of using social justice for justifying privilege. Is yet another tool for silencing people of color by accusing them of racial prejudice. If I say I want to leave because of how I'm being treated, it won't be long before someone accuses me of using my very powerful race card and play the victim. Besides, based on what I've learned about this country up until this moment, I believe that the only possible answer capable of ending this conversation would be a convincing desire to stay, a desire I don't feel. Therefore, my follow-up response becomes even shorter. No, it's not because of Trump. And then I use my nonverbal abilities to make it clear that I have nothing else to add. Miracle says, each time I confronted white colonial society, I had to convince them of my validity as a human being. It was the attempt to convince them that made me realize that I was still a slave. Each time people ask me about my future plans, I feel that they're asking not because of their interest in me, but because they're looking for some kind of reassurance. With the political and economic turmoil that has been going on in recent years, I feel that what they really want to ask is, you do want to stay, right? I mean, we're still the best country in the world, right? I mean, at least we're better than Mexico. And perhaps I'm being super sensitive, or perhaps I'm not. Miracle seems to agree with me when she expresses that white women invite us to speak if the issue is racism, because we're there to teach, to sensitize them, and to serve them. However, I refuse to educate people because I refuse to serve them. It is not my job to educate them in a racial history of a country that is not my own, nor it is to conform those who need to believe in their country. Winter seconds the motion by saying man needs to put an end to the narcissism on which he relies in order to imagine that he is different from other animals. The people in the United States are not different from the people in Mexico, and nor are they better. They just refuse to see who they really are, and when they do see it, they put the blame on somebody else, someone like Trump. Now, in all fairness, I do understand that to most people I'm lying when I say I don't want to stay. However, I'm not. And it really isn't because of Trump. Like my grandma used to say, es lo de menos. Ahmed tells us emotions do things, and they work to align individuals with the collective, our bodily space with our social space, through the very intensity of their attachments. I want to leave because of the emotional burden that is causing me to be here. Another thing that I find really entertaining now that I've left my country and decided to fight for my place in academia is the separation between science and emotion. This idea, this irony of considering emotion too romantic for science, but not considering rationality too romantic for humans. Luckily for me, now affect is getting attention, once again. After a number of years of inattention, affect or emotion once again has become part of an interdisciplinary discourse among social and behavioral scientists. This quote I just shared was articulated almost 30 years ago in a communication journal. And now I have to take classes outside of communication in order to be able to approach affect or emotion in a non-rhetorical manner, in an actual engaged manner, an emotional manner. This is not because of Donald Trump. And this is not because of what he said about us Mexicans when he announced his candidacy. This is about all the people who clap when he called us criminals, and all the people who continue to clap every time he yells, build the wall. That rhetoric, those individuals are creating a hostile environment in which I need to work, study, do research, present at conferences, eat, sleep, live, keep breathing, try to have a personal life, and even find time to prove myself worthy of the generosity of those who allow me to be here. But I'll talk about generosity later. Emotions, as Ahmed tells us, come from the outside, from an environment, and they move inward, to the inside. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at myself in the mirror and asked myself, what color am I? For some, I look brown. For others, not brown enough. I navigate life between a, you don't look Mexican, and you're not from here, right? For me, I used to look beautiful, and I miss the days when I didn't even care about having freckles because I felt they made me kind of special. I don't remember a day in Mexico when I stood up in front of a mirror and worried about something else besides my weight. Ahmed is right. Emotions do come from an outside. An outside which used to tell me to watch what I ate, different from an outside which now tells me that crime has a skin color that I should be thankful I don't have. I can't decide which one is more dehumanizing. The first caused me my health and a constant struggle with eating disorders, and the latter is trying to make me grateful for something I have no control over. The problem, as I see it, is not hate politics as usual. It is blaming the other as usual. I want to leave because of how this environment works and because of how much I lose every day I stay in it. Ahmed tells us, the overcoming of the pain of others is what gives the reader hope, and I've lost hope. My doubts have erased my prayers, my logic has erased my faith, my anger has erased my smile, my schedule has erased everything that I ever considered life. How much more will I lose before I get my PhD? And by the end of it, will it be worth it? Ahmed explains that some feelings of pain and suffering, which are in part effects of socioeconomic relations of violence and poverty, are assumed to be alleviated by the very generosity that is enabled through such economic relations. Generosity in the form of a PhD acceptance letter, generosity in the form of a PhD degree, generosity in the form of access to education, generosity in the form of a temporary visa. Generosity? No. Migajas? Sí. Breadcrumbs compared to everything that I've given up to be here, and migajas compared to everything that I have to deny about myself in order to succeed here. And no, in case you're wondering, I'm not considering leaving without my degree because I want my losses to count for something. And before you even consider it, no, I'm afraid to tell you, the Democrats aren't better. As my grandma used to say, a todos tengo, so beware. In what I consider to be a desperate attempt to hold on to faith in humanity, another thing that I've heard numerous times in conversations about U.S. politics is the idea that the Democrats are better. The Republicans are crazy, I hear after times. They're bringing racism, they're bringing crime, they're uneducated, they're bigots, and some, I assume, are good people. Who does that sound like? Blaming the Republicans is just as bad as blaming the Mexicans. It is a matter of us versus them. Whereas for me, it should be an opportunity for self-examination. What's more discouraging about this election process is that instead of engaging in a conversation about the conditions which allowed the message of Donald Trump to gain such resonance with that many people, The U.S. is engaging in immature pinpointing and professional scapegoating. For Trump, it is the Mexicans. For Democrats, it is the Republicans. For Republicans, it is the immigrants. For the educated, it's the uneducated. For the uneducated, it's the politicians. Even the current president of the United States dismissed the opportunity of having a much-needed serious conversation about scapegoating when he said, I have a lot of faith in the American people. I continue to believe that Mr. Trump won't be president. And what about Mrs. Clinton? We are already great. And we are great because we're good. Really? This blindness, this unwillingness to engage in self-examination, this idea of American values, of honorability, of freedom, it's all a lie. And you don't have to take my word for it. You just have to read Lord, Miracle, Alexander, Tildua, Lugones, Alvarez, and all the other men and women who have stood up before me. American values, wow. You want to hear my definition of American values? Those are the values that people of color in America haven't been able to find. Frontrunners and presidential candidates talking about borders without understanding what borders stand for and the history behind it. You want to close the borders and build a wall? Great, do it, please. That may prevent your corporations to continue to exploit our resources and starve my people. On the other hand, you want a free trade? Perfect. Why not? I'm not against that. But if you think that it is fair for a multi-million-dollar to compete with a corporation that's local on even ground, then I'm sure you don't have a problem if professionals compete on even ground for the same jobs available, regardless of the nationalities. Because as Chunky said, free trade without free movement of labor is not trade, it's exploitation. Baldwin said, globalization is framed in liberal discourses as the loss of national sovereignty under conditions of capital mobility. Yet, framing globalization as a loss of sovereignty elides the critical historical fact that the loss of sovereignty, not to mention the loss of jobs, life, security, land, and rights, has been a defining experience for people of color for centuries. Think colonialism and slavery. Thus, I repeat myself, it is not because of Trump. He is the symptom, not the illness. The illness is what you're neglecting with this idea of the free world. So I will say it again. No, I'm not leaving because of Trump. It is because of what Ahmed calls the impressions left by others. It is because here histories are made on the skin surface, and as such, nothing is deeply understood. And you may be standing there listening to me and wondering, so you leave, why should I worry? To this I tell you, if you tell me to go back to my country, I actually do have a country to go back to. But I'm standing here before you, risking my professional career and using affect, because I want you to realize that there are people out there who speak and look like me, but who belong in this country. And whatever is being said in politics affects them as much as it affects me. And it will not be solved by voting for another candidate. Let me read you my shirt, in case you haven't seen it already. Mexican academic, not a criminal. Yes, I also find it stupid that I had to print this shirt. Now, we can spend all day arguing about why I decided to do this. That's ridiculous, you might say. Oh, I agree, I would respond. And some of you would even add, you're obviously one of the good ones. If you belong to this group, I invite you to take a minute and actually reflect on this. What makes me one of the good ones? The fact that my family was wealthy enough to support my first world education, my visas, my English classes? If you like me because of these, congratulations, you're not a racist. You're a classist. You want to know what's truly ridiculous for me? The fact that I have to prove myself to every stranger with my credentials because apparently being a human being is not good enough. Just as ridiculous as it is having to detach myself from criminal activity because my womanhood, combined with my colorfulness, make me dangerous and suspicious. Do you know what I had in mind when I decided to migrate to the first world? I wanted to be able to say, hi everyone, I'm Ana. Because in Mexico, I was just a vieja, only a woman. So then I ask you, what's the difference? First world, third world? In what world do I get to be human, and in what world do I get to be myself? This isn't about Trump. And this isn't about me either. This is an attempt from a scholar to invite scientists to reclaim emotion as a human trait. Just as biological, as natural, as valuable, and as useful as rationality. And this is also an attempt from an academic to invite other academics to use our voices and our knowledge to make this world a better place. A better place for yourself, a better place for ourselves, and a better place for all of us who we have neglected while we've been busy theorizing about the other. Let's balance practice and theory, and let the sun light all the colors.